Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.arganissima.com. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, and basically the Fit and Fab channel. Today, I have a new guest, a new show, a new topic, a very, very sweet story that you will love. I love it. And, it is just amazing when you're going to hear the story. But with me, I have an author and also a doctor in physical therapy, but she specializes in a little bit of a more unique physical therapy concept. She uses a holistic approach to her, physical therapy business, and we're going to talk about all that. So with me, Melissa Mayer today, will actually cover a lot of grounds with us. So Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Hurricane.
So let's talk about your story. It is a very long story. Well, short, depends on how you want to go about it. I just, when I was reading about it, I was literally like, just basically in shock in a way and amazed. And because of the outcome and the decision that you had to go through. And I'm being suspenseful, so people will be like, "Wow, what's going on here? We got to hear this thing, right?" But definitely you're gonna hear it, and you know what I'm talking about. And I want to pose the question later on to people. I mean, how many of us listening, watching would take the steps and make that decision that Melissa made? And I'll leave it at that for now. But before that, I'd like to just as always, start the show with you telling us a little bit about your background. Your education, your journey in terms of physical therapy, what got you into it in the first place, and obviously just some credibility about the practice, and then we can talk about your transfer into the holistic world, and then in the middle of that, we'll talk about your sweet story, and then ultimately we'll talk about your book because that's big. We want to talk about the book, so let's do that. So, who is Melissa?
So I'm a mother, a wife, and a holistic physical therapist. I live on the East End of Long Island, known as the Hamptons. I am a physical therapist by trade, went to physical therapy school at UMD&J in Newark, New Jersey, and then started practicing in New York City for many years in the traditional healthcare setting. My first job was at Columbia Presbyterian. And then I worked in outpatient services, I worked in home care services, and just got a really good background in traditional healthcare. I knew prior to entering the field of physical therapy that I would want to take it in a holistic direction. I kind of felt the calling of being a healer, but in my younger days, didn't really know what that meant and how I was going to pursue it. And my kind of intuition said, learn the rules before you can break them. So that's what I did. I learned the rules, and I'm really glad I got a good background in healthcare because it is a complicated field and you have to know how to navigate it. And there are a lot of red flags, and to treat patients safely, you do need to know the rules. So I practiced for many years. I had my children and did my yoga teacher training, traveled to India and did a lot of work, out there, and also traveled to Sri Lanka and Africa on a yoga retreat. So, traveled, lived my life, had my two children. That was really transformational in and of itself, becoming a mother. They're now 8 and 10. I fell in love with attachment parenting and Rudolf Steiner, Waldorf education, and simplicity parenting. So that was a really big influence in my life. Took some time off of work so I could really just focus on being a mother, and did a lot of inner child healing in the process of raising my children. So found a deeper connection with myself in the practice of motherhood, and then kind of led to the transformative journey that I wrote about in my book.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot. Well, first of all, you're passionate about everything that you've talked about, so far in that brief intro, and certainly your journey. I mean, you've discovered a lot of things. Traveling is always an eye opener. It's a big deal. But I think also, I'm impressed about your background. I mean, the education, the actual, some nice prestigious locations and jobs you've had there. So that it's we have to recognize that. And so you had certainly a terrific background in terms of your practice and what you've done. And then you seem to have found a different approach to things as you've ventured into around the world, and obviously yoga is one of the elements that you use, and I guess that maybe what transformed a little bit some of your approach. And then you mentioned something about being a parent, a mother, and having two daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that also changed a little bit things because you had to do a whole different style of education, and we're going to talk about that because I think that's important because homeschooling can be one thing. I'm not familiar with the Waldorf I guess education system, so we'll talk about that. Maybe we can bring that to our audiences as an alternative, or at least something that they're aware of.
Absolutely.
Is it just another form, or is it a specific form of parent like homeschooling, all that?
Well, it's Rudolf Steiner actually came up with the concept in 1919. It's an international schooling philosophy. He also came up with anthroposophy, which is the connection to the human. And that's really what it models around. It's really the education is aimed at connecting the child to themselves. So I feel like, it was such refreshment from a world where we just want to inundate our children with content. By age 2, we want them reading and, reciting the periodic table. And, this approach, especially in the early childhood, it does evolve, of course, as the child gets older. But the early childhood model is really centered around the connection with nature, artistic, lots of watercolor painting and molding beeswax, baking bread, getting in touch with the higher senses, because a child doesn't know it's Wednesday, but they know bread day will teach them that it's Wednesday when they come in and they smell that bread baking. So, these kind of really simple concepts, but actually it's a very sophisticated model of really having the child learn who they are. They learn rhythm in accordance with the seasons. Very important to rake leaves in the fall and put on your snow boots in the winter and plant in the garden in spring, because our bodies, we're nature as much as we move towards technology and move away from nature. But a child is born and it really fosters that connection to nature and therefore themselves. And I think it gives a really solid foundation to be whatever you want to be in the world, because, you don't stay that way forever, but it's very focused on creativity, imagination. Storytelling is very big, just learning how to tell stories and listen to stories, and the imagination in stories, and simplicity. I mean, the joy of stacking rocks. I mean, we always joke about the child who likes the box more than the present, because in the box, it can be a house. You can put a blanket over it. It could be a fort. So just that real simplicity, which is so powerful. And I mean, we could talk for an hour about that. I'll leave it there.
Well, actually, I'm intrigued. I mean, like I said, I know about homeschooling formats, which standardized stuff, but I have not heard about this particular approach, which is almost. I mean, when you hear it and listening to you, I mean, you're talking about some practical stuff, and unfortunately, in today's education, that's actually something that's not as common, and a lot of theory, very little practical stuff, in our children's curriculum. So it's kind of like a little challenging. And as they get older, obviously it gets a little busier. You talked about storytelling, but it's not the same thing. You get books and you read them. You have to write an essay and and depict it. So it's just a different angle. But I think it's more in touch, more in depth, and it's really like you feel it's live, it's active, kind of education. So that, at least that's what I'm gathering from the system, and and I guess it gives the children a different perspective about the world because they experience it, differently. And
so much modeling, experiential learning. The teacher will if you watch the teacher, you learn. I learned so much from watching their teachers. Their teacher crouches down and looks them in the eye and says, "Oh, I see, that you're digging in the dirt here. What are you digging?" And, and just really like getting on their level and just meeting them where they're at, which is really, really beautiful. and, looking at the bird in the tree, I wonder where that birdie's going. Is he building a nest? And, instead of saying, what do you want for lunch today? Or, like things that like a child lives so in the present moment. So you enter that magical present moment with them. And, it's really beautiful. And then, meditating and learning about Buddhism. I'm like, wow, so many of these parallels of living in the present moment, one moment at a time, like where the child lives, and entering that with them, and realizing if you're running around the house chaotic, they're going to have a meltdown versus, moving slowly and like with rhythm and with kind of intention. And we know children, how they gravitate towards that. I mean, they can see what's up and what's real because they're just so connected. So that's what I loved about it. I learned so much from it. I was learning with them, and it was really beautiful.
Well, kids are as real as it gets. I mean, they tell you, they say it as it is. They don't sugarcoat stuff, and that's beautiful, right? I mean, sometimes it can be bad, but overall, I mean, as long as you accept it, right? But so in essence, I mean, they do have a formal. There's teachers. There's a whole practice. I mean, this is not just sit home. Here's the curriculum. Here's the books. Read. Do this and do that.
Yeah, I mean, some people do. If you are a homeschooler, you could. I mean, usually you follow a curriculum, and there is a Waldorf homeschooling curriculum, so people can do it out of their home, but there also are Waldorf schools in the U.S. and across the world, all over the world, really.
Interesting. Listen, folks. Hey, there you go. So now we learned about something again.
Waldorf education.
I have not, heard about it. I mean, I was wondering. I wanted to learn more. So now I got a little bit of an education on it,
Yeah,
and I guess so did some of our viewers and listeners right now. But it sounds great. And again, just listening to you, I know you would recommend this. Period. If someone can do it and is willing to do it and wants to investigate it, they should. I mean, and I'll put some links on the show so at least people can have an idea what how to go about it, and if they want to at least explore it. And by the way, this is not just for younger children. You basically in the system until you graduate, or how does that work? How long does it?
There are Waldorf schools that go all the way up through high school.
Okay.
So people, I think most people know about the early childhood component because that's the kind of piece that a lot of people find. But it does go up through high schooling, and it changes very much. A high schooler doesn't really learn about fairies and gnomes the way, the small child is told about stories of fairies and gnomes. So, it evolves as the child gets older. But yeah, there's definitely Waldorf education is what it's called. It's by Rudolf Steiner. And then, we can definitely direct people to some websites with more information because it's definitely worth looking up and exploring. It's fascinating.
Well, I think we're going to need some of that these days because I think our kid, listen, I can speak on my own experience. My kids are kind of not in touch with their nature. they're more like, in social environments, and they're either on a computer or something, but they're not really, nature is not something. I grew up where we enjoyed outdoors, and although I had a regular, education system, but it was still like, as kids, at least we had that. Today, there's none of that anymore. I mean, it's really just, you spend more time on a computer screen or a phone or some sort of a game, for hours, and which is ridiculous. But unfortunately, that's how it's almost an addiction these days. So, so that's beautiful, actually. And maybe we have to promote more of it.
Absolutely.
But so Doctor, when you did this, was that because you were doing the traveling and discovering through the yoga and stuff, and that was a decision, or something that actually was before?
I had heard about it. My cousin had sent her kids to Waldorf schools, and I didn't know what they were at that time. And then started learning through her and seeing her kids develop and saying, wow, this is so cool. Seeing, their attention spans, and, because they sit around in nature and play all day. I mean, just like their focus for things, and I just started seeing the benefits, and just being someone who always felt connected to nature, just felt, like it just really resonated with me. The more and more I learned about it, I was a little resistant to it at first when I heard about, kind of some of the hands-off of technology, especially in the early ages, but then realized like how valuable it is, and how, they catch up. I mean, they all, they have plenty of years to get on devices and learn about technology. So, those early years, just protecting it. And, Kim Jong-pin, who's an author who has a simplicity parenting movement, talks about the undeclared war on childhood, and just, letting children be children, and just really preserving that and protecting that, because they're going to be tweens, they're going to be high schoolers, they're going to enter the real world. Nobody's denying that, but just protecting, the really simplicity and the beauty of the young child. So I loved it.
Doctor, so I have a question for you.
Yes.
If you had a way to go back in time, would you have, asked your parents if you could to have
Yes.
that?
Yes. I think a lot of us make choices for our children based on if we, I definitely went to those schools and said, oh, I would have loved going to a school like this when I was a child. But yeah, so then I would have loved to have gone to a school like that when I was a child. But, I came to it and, we're all where we are and we're here now. And
well, listen, we have our own time. I mean, the kids have their own time, and as long as we made the right decisions for them, it's still good. You experience it with them. So that's the other thing, right? But I think that, because you travel and because you love to do all the other stuff and in the spiritual world, I guess, and the more holistic, this is actually in touch with all that. I mean, it's in tune with it. So it's actually, they I guess they get to understand it better. They can relate to it better. They are actually more, in sync with what you do as in your activities and things. So it's a formal, connection, as opposed to just like, you'll be in one world and they're in a different world. So this is great. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing, actually. And I hope that our audiences, can definitely, investigate the concept. And, now I'm gonna have to do more research, actually, and probably do some specific shit just for that. but so now let's talk about the sweet story, because I want to refer to it as that for now, because it is a unique. Well, it's not unique because I'm sure there are cases just like that, but I think far in between. There's not a lot of them. It's a journey. It's a story of sacrifice. It's a tough decision making. And also true love, and commitment. So, it's funny when a couple gets married, there's that whole commitment, dead and alive and all that stuff. And you go through the whole, commitment, but nothing prepares you for the stuff that you had to go through. And so again, I'm still being suspenseful, but, and I don't want to say it. I want you, Doctor, to share with us the story. So let's talk about that. What happened, and because I want to hear about it, and I know we're gonna talk about it and post a little bit here.
So 10 years ago, because my oldest daughter is 10 now, I was sitting in the midwife's office. I was pregnant, and it was going to be the first time we heard the heartbeat of our child. My husband met me. He's a physician. He was a resident at the time. So he met me in the waiting room, and we're sitting there, and I knew something was on his mind. And he had always had a kidney condition, and he had always been followed by a nephrologist. And his old nephrologist, who's at Columbia, coincidentally, where I worked my first hospital job, retired. So he was seeing a new nephrologist, and he had that appointment before the midwife appointment. So he meets me at the midwife office, and I said, how'd the appointment go? And he said, no, we're not talking about that now. We're here for the baby. Let's, this is a special moment. So often, as when you're in a provider's office, we had to wait a long time. And as the minutes were ticking by, I said, what happened with that appointment? And he said, well, I'm going to need a kidney transplant. And we had known at some point, because he had raised creatinine levels since he was a young child. So we always knew that this would be a possibility at some point. But the transition to seeing this new doctor said, no, this is a reality, and we need to really start going there. So it was pretty shocking, hearing that news, being pregnant with my first child. But I said, okay, well, what do we do? And he said, well, we have to find a donor. So thankfully, a bunch of family and friends all volunteered to be tested, which was really lovely. And the best match was found to be me. And I said, well, of course I want to be the donor. I mean, you're my husband. I need you to survive. I need a dad for my child. So yeah, I'll be the donor. So I asked, if I could get tested when I was pregnant, and I did, and they found that I was a match. And I said, might be tough, after having a newborn. And the nephrologist said, well, you know what, now that we have the donor, we have all the paperwork in place, we did all the work, everything's all set up, we can just wait, a little longer until the creatinine, a kidney marker is at, a point where we really just have to have the surgery. So he said, I don't know how long that will be, maybe a couple months, maybe a year or 2 years, we don't know. So we did all the right works. We filed it in the back of our mind, and miraculously, it was 7 years that we were able to wait, which was such a blessing because I was able to have my daughter. And then 2 years later, I had my second daughter. So we left New York City. We were living there at the time, to our home now on the east end of Long Island, in the Hamptons, which is a beautiful beach community. I was able to be a mother and embrace motherhood, like we were talking earlier, and Waldorf education and just all that beauty. My husband was a full-time physician. He was able to work and not have any issues. And then it was April 2018, and he went back to the doctor because they were monitoring him very closely. And they said, okay, now it's really time. Your creatinine has hit a point where we really have to have the surgery. So it was a scramble of diagnostic testing, chest x-rays, meeting with a psychiatrist, just a whole gamut and battery of tests to make sure that once you do all the tests, then you get presented to a transplant committee to make sure, they don't want to do surgery on someone who's not going to be successful. It looks bad for their healthcare outcomes, and it's just not worth it for anybody. So, we got chosen, and we had the surgery April 1st, 2018. August 1st, 2018. So April, May, June. So it took a couple months to get those final tests up to date. But we had the surgery, and, it was one of those things that it was an obstacle that I dreaded for years, but then it became this miraculous opportunity for growth and for miracles. I talk about in the book that I wrote about it, having a divine wake up. I felt like when I woke up after surgery, I felt a deeper connection to myself, to spirit. I kind of broke down the day before and got on my knees and said, God, if that's what you are, I never considered myself a religious person, but a spiritual person. And I said, I need a miracle here. Like my husband's life is at stake, my family. And I woke up and I felt like it was like miracle granted. You're going to be fine. Your husband's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And that was, 3 years ago, and we're great. My husband's great. I'm great. It was such an opportunity for growth and for happiness. I stopped drinking alcohol after the surgery. I just felt like so clear and connected, and realized how I was using alcohol in my life in an ineffective way in terms of just numbing myself to my high sensitivity. So that was miraculous, and my work, I was a physical therapist always, but just it really changed my work in terms of really having the confidence and conviction to take my work to a holistic level and establish my healing practice. And, it was, like I said, it was all giant miracle.
Well, it's a tremendous miracle. It's just amazing. And there's a lot of things just there, and I want just to kind of dissect a couple of things. One, you hear this news, and it happens to be the day where you're literally finding out about your own baby. So that's a very double-edged sword. On one hand is one great news, and the other one, like, oh my God, right? And that's a tough, pill to swallow right there. And but I guess you were strong and you were able to manage through it. But then, luckily, it took 7 years. But let me ask you a question. There was no dialysis in between, right? So you went right to.
Thank goodness.
So this was basically, let's get this, and then no need for all the dialysis and the patchwork because typically that's what that is. Just until you find a donor, you have to get your kidneys operational. But you didn't have to do that, so because you already were committed to it.
Exactly. Thank goodness he didn't have to wait on a list, and he never, like I said, at one point I told them, I said, are you sure he should have surgery? Look at him. He looks so healthy. And they said, if his creatinine goes up anymore, he could get a bad case of the flu, and that could like put him in acute renal failure, needing dialysis. And then after that, it's going to be this slippery slope of trying to get healthy enough to have surgery. And they're like, believe us, like, you don't want to go down that road. And so I think we did it really at the perfect time. He was healthy enough where he did so well in the surgery, but, we didn't just have surgery for no reason. His creatinine was at, a very kind of, red flag level. So, I really attribute all of that to the incredible team at Columbia Presbyterian. I mean, they managed it so well without, because I was from the holistic mindset. I'm like, we're going to have, do we need to have this surgery? And they were like, yes, you need to have this. And they were really the best in the business. I mean, we met a fellow who had discovered the gene, because my husband has this rare kidney disorder that they don't even really know too much about. They know it's not progressive, so my kidney will be good in his body. But we met a researcher who had discovered the gene. I mean, like the research and just the whole system. And that's why, as much I love holistic therapy, but I also always attribute the traditional medical model, and the possibilities and the things that they can do. I mean, we were managed so well, and I'm so grateful for that.
Well, again, Colombia is not a small place. It's one of the biggest and most teaching hospital, you name it. I mean, research, they're just big, and I mean that's lucky. Well, it's not lucky, but I mean that's really, I would say miraculous. That's the word you said. I think that's the key word here, and that's great. But I think the story here is beyond that. I mean, first of all, for all these things to happen and they all fall in place, I mean, the odds of that is always a little hard. And I know someone would be listening, like, maybe stories out there, people may not have had the same result or the same outcome you've had because it just, it wasn't, the set of circumstances didn't really apply correctly. In your case, luckily everything was, there. You were willing to do it. And you and I, we had the little chat earlier about that is a tough decision. I know you said, yes, my husband, I need you for my kids and all that. But I mean, you really have to be committed because, listen, I've had shows about, God forbid, divorce and stuff, and the rates are high. And that's like somebody you can think of like, well, what happens if, God forbid, right? It can be a lot of things just to find a reason and objection why you wouldn't do it. Because people sometimes, when, it gets tough, that's when true people show up. I mean, the true you will show up. So, I mean, you pass that test with flying colors. I mean, that's not easy actually for anyone. And frankly, I mean, some people, even the family, they're probably like, I don't know, I need my 2 kidneys, right? So it was a very selfless, it was not selfish. And on your part, it was actually really, really sweet. That's why I call it sweet and generous of you, and that's tough. And it's a risky business because, yes, I mean, before you go surgery, they can assure you everything, but no surgery is 100% guaranteed. And we go in, they always give you like, well, sign this, sign that. You never know. And it's both of you now, not just you. I mean, both of you are under, anesthesia. You're both gone, and and you got to wake up and hope for the best. And
yeah, it's scary. That's why I kind of had that moment of surrender, of just being like, God, when I close my eyes, like my family, like so much, I'm so vulnerable, so much is at stake here. And that's why, I just got on my knees and prayed and said, please, like there's so much at stake here. But, thankfully, like I said, we were so well managed, like, they make sure that donors are really healthy and, will survive the surgeries, and not just survive, but, do very, very well. And, just so much education for the donor that, that you don't have to rush into it, like so many opportunities, like, saying we're your advocate, we're here for you, this is your decision, like a lot of really great support and education to make sure that you're not kind of going in this blind, I mean, they really take a lot of time with the donor. And they even had me stay on the VIP floor of the hospital during my recovery, which I did not realize until they wheeled me up there. I said, oh my gosh, I'm on the VIP wing of the hospital. Like, oh, all of our donors stay here. And I was like, wow, that's so nice,
That's the least they can do. I mean,
Yeah, but in hospitals, you just never know, what kind of care you're going to get. And they rolled me up after the surgery, and the nurses clapped at the nursing station, and I was still coming off of anesthesia, and I was like, why are you clapping? And they said, you saved a life today. And I said, oh, I guess I didn't think about it like that. And, I mean, it was, the care was wonderful. And then, the cover of my book is me kind of at the spiritual mountaintop in Sri Lanka. I had gotten the opportunity to go to Sri Lanka 3 months after the surgery with a Buddhist monk with my local meditation center. And I remember sitting with one of the monks, and he spoke very broken English because he was from Sri Lanka. And he noticed I wasn't drinking. Everybody was having a little glass of wine at the pool. It was a nice evening. And he said, you no drink? And I said, no, I had surgery, and, I'm healthy now. And I just don't drink anymore. And he said, surgery? And I said, yeah, kidney to my husband. I was like, he's never going to understand that. But he did. And he looked at me, and in the deepest, most beautiful way, he said, thank you. And I'm like, monks, they give the food, from their hand. I mean, anything. I mean, they're the most generous giving people. And they were so touched because they're like, to give a part of your body to someone, the karma and, the work behind what they do. So to get his approval, I was like, wow, to impress a monk, that takes a bunch. And I felt like that trip was like the happy ending, the spiritual mountaintop of the transformation. So it was really kind of amazing timing of the trip and the experience that I had with the really amazing group that I went. So that's the cover of the book, if people see the cover.
Nice. Well, first of all, I mean, thank you. Yes. I mean, that is, I'm sure your husband is thankful. You are thankful. Your kids are thankful, and everybody in your world is. And frankly, thank you, because that's a big, deal. And like I said, when I heard it, I had to cover this. I mean, and people listening, we all go through life, and we never know today is beautiful. You never know what tomorrow brings. And, life always throws in challenges. And this is probably one of the worst and the most difficult challenges you can get, when a loved one is touched, with such, devastating, situation that you have to fix. And for the most part, it's not as easy as people think. And by the way, the fact that you're a match, that's another thing. I mean, that's the odds of that itself is kind of like unique, because not everybody actually, you can have your own family and still not have the same match. So it's tough.
Yeah. It's great.
This was a marriage in heaven, as they say, right? So you were connected before. That's why.
In heaven. And, I have to say, I mean, my husband is incredibly supportive, and it was kind of at the point where I said, please, giving him my kidney was the least I can do. I mean, he's someone who's loved me unconditionally since, I met him, and has supported my work, supported the book. I decided I wanted to write a book before the transplant. So I didn't know what it was going to be about. I just had this premonition that I wanted to write a book. And he was like, okay, if you want to write a book, write a book, instead of being like, what, I mean, he just always has my back. He's always supported me throughout all the kind of ups and downs I've been through, wanting to travel. And, I went to India 3 months after we got married. And I was like, that's cool with you? He's like, yeah, I mean, you said that's your dream. You've always wanted to go there to, volunteer with this organization and, deliver healthcare. So yeah, I'm not going to tell you no. And, and I mean, I think all partners necessarily support their partners like that. So, he had just always supported me, that when people, always joke, they say, oh, wow, he owes you a lot. And I say, no, actually, I kind of feel like we're even, he supported me so much that, a kidney was the least I could do.
Well, true partnership, right? That's not everybody. And it's marriage sometimes is just a word or a bunch of rituals, but this is true marriage. This is a real relationship. It's give and take. It's it's a teamwork, and yes, you have to be flexible. You have to work with each other, and you help each other. That's the bottom line.
Right.
And so he's lucky and you're lucky. So that's a beautiful thing. And, glad to hear that everything worked out, and, God bless you guys. And hopefully you never have to worry about, surgeries anymore. You've had your share. But I wanted to just touch one thing. I know we talked about Presby, and we're talking about the highest level of care in the States, if not in the world. Some people will say, well, you guys are truly lucky to have that. Not everybody has the same luck. But I wanted to just, from a healthcare perspective, yes, there are different hospitals, there are different systems, but the care that you had could possibly be accessible to everyone. It's not because you were doctors, because you were there. I just wanted to clear that, because, I worked with Presby as well, and I know that they see everybody. And if you're a patient, you get the same treatment.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, anybody who would go to New York Presbyterian would get that level of care. So, I mean, and I definitely, that's not to say there aren't disparities in healthcare. I mean, I think
Oh, they are. Sure.
that, I mean, for sure, if anything, I see it now more than ever, delivering holistic physical therapy and feeling like, I don't do it through insurance these days. So, recognizing that that's, a problem, that it becomes kind of very privileged care. A lot of really good wellness care is very privileged because it often becomes out of pocket. But in terms of the kidney transplant itself, the care we got there, I mean, you'd have to have insurance, which of course not everybody has, but even like basic insurance. And I'm sure even if you had certain types of, Medicare, Medicaid, there was a transplant coordinator, a financial coordinator who kind of did all the paperwork to make sure that your medications would be covered and such afterward, because they're like, we're not going to do a transplant on someone who wouldn't have access to the, extensive medication regimen afterwards. So, that's why they presented to the transplant committee to make sure that all, that you have the social support, that you have, the insurance support behind it, but they don't turn people away because, you don't have the financial means. It's not like we got that care because we went in there and we paid for it. So I do feel like we got great care, just having health insurance in this country. So as much as there's problems with health insurance, and there's tons of them, but having health insurance, we got spectacular care. So that was the good news.
Well, it is. And I just, again, from the insurance world, I mean, I can say that, it is covered, for the most part. I mean, most policies will allow for it. Medicare for the longest didn't even allow health plans to be participating in that. ESRD was actually, end-stage renal disease was actually out of the managed care concept. I think it only got put back into it like last year or something. Now it's actually covered.
Even had to put him on Medicare. He was eligible for Medicare.
Exactly.
He had end-stage renal disease.
Exactly.
So exactly. That's a great point that you bring up. He did have access to government health care because of his condition.
Correct.
And it was all covered for. And we didn't we got bills afterward, but I mean, we didn't get bills that, cost us our house or anything like that. Thank goodness. Because I know there are stories.
No, there are stories, and hospital stay can be, very expensive. And again, when you have Medicare, there's deductibles, there's all this stuff. Depends what insurance you have. So there's so many things. But again, kidney specifically is under Medicare, and therefore there is a potential of getting. And one of the reasons why it was not included into the managed care concept because of network accessibility. So you would pretty much, you can be eligible for a transplant, and you can find somebody in a different state or whatever that could give you the opportunity to save a life that way. So there was a lot of, reasons behind it. And now with the new rulings and stuff, it's a little different, but Medicaid as well, can cover it. If, someone is really, under, a certain income bracket, they can do it. Of course, private insurance, if you buy policies, I mean, you can buy any policy you want, and based on what you need to cover, it's all there. So I just wanted to plug that in because people can say, well, we're talking about with two doctors and, she worked at Presby as someone, she's got to have that comment. So I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge all those potentials. And, in the US, yes, it's very difficult. Sometimes we talk about healthcare, and there's a lot of different things that happen in it. And compared to maybe some Europe and other type of healthcare systems, but nevertheless, you will never be denied care. And the problem is how to pay for it. And that's the other part. So you'll get the right care, you'll get the right service. And ultimately now it's the question, who pays for it? And there's a will, there's a way. There's a lot of ways to do this, and subsidies and things like that. And so always check out and find out more. If you don't have the ability, just do it. And that's about it. So I just wanted to cover that because you talked about
a really important point. And I've been on podcasts where the hosts are from Canada or, different countries. And first of all, they don't know about New York Presbyterian. And I tell people we had some of the best doctors in this country, and I would argue maybe this world. And they would say, your healthcare system has so many challenges and issues. And I said, it does, but let's acknowledge that, they took a kidney out of my body and they put it in my husband's, and it was covered under insurance. So that's pretty cool.
It is. And again, I mean, the word of insurance is a little bit intense, but understanding the different things, I mean, is pretty accessible. So There's a lot of opportunity, and you can ask questions. There's a lot of places, and you reach out to any insurance company, they'll educate you. You'll reach out to social services, they'll do that. Medicare will have some. So there's always a way, and there's information through like podcasts or other type of platforms, and there's definitely a lot of stuff that that's available for education. And again, your case is one in a million maybe, or more, but it can happen. And it's not just your case, many other things, other diseases types, or illnesses, people are always concerned. And yes, we all are concerned. Our health is our wealth, right? And we're always worried about it, but certainly let's just understand that you can have teaching hospitals, and you can have the best services. Again, it's a hit or miss. Depends. Some places in the States, for example, may not have access to Presby, and but you can travel. And that's why I said that's what Medicare. At least in the time you did it, Medicare was still general, so you basically could be in any hospital that can provide the surgery. So it's not just a local hospital in your state, for example. And that's the chance. I guess there's a change now, but it's not going to be as difficult as back in today's, I guess. So now let's talk about the book. So we got your picture. You're on the mountain there, and you you just got this hot. And by the way, I'm sure that's an experience being with the monks and just the whole Zen moment there, and just being with nature. And I'm sure after the surgery, you said it, your life is different. You're in touch with with the spiritual world, and that's actually everybody's experience when it comes to close to anything that has to do with that or illness or uncertainty. We tend to we set back. No matter how we believed, we stand and we say, wait a minute, I am very vulnerable right now. Yeah, I'm not as strong as I thought, tough as I thought. I'm not in control, and that's when we find the reality of things, and that's a big deal. And a lot of people sometimes like that until that ultimate moment, and then they realize what's up. So you did, and you changed your life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So now your practice started becoming more holistic, as you said. So what changed in that aspect?
So, I had, like I said, I had taken some time off raising my children from, full-time physical therapy work. And then I was, picking up shifts at my local clinic, doing per diem work here and there. And then, started writing my book and said, how am I going to, pay to publish this book? And I was like, I can pick up physical therapy shifts. And then started realizing, this is interesting now. Physical therapy is kind of helping support, this creative vision that I have. And then started to think about, I went to a yoga class in my community and I knew the teacher, and it was the first class I had after my surgery. And, we just started talking, and she was just like, why don't you just see patients here? Because I was saying, I would just like to do deeper healing with my patients after I've experienced all this healing. And she said, do sessions here out of the yoga studio. And I was like, yeah, of course I can do private, physical therapy sessions here at the yoga studio. So I started doing sessions there, and then, I had to pay rent though. So I had to, charge people to pay the studio owner. And then they said, well, just come to your house. And I said, okay. So I started seeing patients out of my house. And then with COVID, we did a renovation. So I built, a healing space in my home that has a separate entrance. And, it just kind of all came together through the writing of my book, which is a very therapeutic process. I was just able to unpack, my life growing up, traveling, becoming a mother, why I became, a physical therapist, all the self-help work I had done through the years. I'm a huge fan of Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson. So just Eckhart Tolle, reading all those books through the years, wanting to write a book, and just all the therapeutic work together, and just layering on it and saying, this is the work I want to do with my patients. I want to go deeper than I've worked in the healthcare system for years. I know where it falls short. Like I said, it can provide good care, but I know where it falls short, and I want to be able to provide that for people. And, it gave me the courage and conviction to just really kind of step into recovering my true self, which is the name of the book, and just recovering my truth and what I want to do, and being healed and wanting to extend healing to others. So it just all came together just through the years, all the work, layer by layer, through the writing of the book, and then, through the evolution of my work and my practice.
Thank you. So let's just kind of break down a little bit of the practice. So it is physical therapy.
Yeah.
But with a different angle, with a different spin.
Exactly. So a lot of times, I always do free phone consults with people just to make sure we're, kind of have the same expectations. And people will say, I have ankle pain or back pain, and I went to physical therapy, and I still have the pain, or I went there. I don't want to. I tell people it's a good place to start. Use your insurance. Go to physical therapy. But then I think they see, the overscheduling and the insurance, and they're like, sorry, we can't work on your back, you're here for your ankle, and it's not the physical therapist's fault. I mean, physical therapists are really, really competent and ethical practitioners, I've always found. And they know where the limitations are, within the system. So I can just kind of work beyond that. I can say, come in here and let's work on the back, but then we can do some work on the hip. And then afterward, we can do some meditation, and we can do some yoga as your therapeutic exercises. And I do acupuncture cupping and, and lots of, body work. I do myofascial release, but I do lots of like kind of energetic clearing within that. And we can just go deeper. I work with them for an hour, one-on-one, and, in a quiet space with oils diffusing that has, the energy of the earth, in this space. So we could just do things that you can't do in a traditional office when there's, patients scheduled every 15 minutes, and, you have 10 minutes with the physical therapist because the aide's running you through the exercises. And it just kind of feels like you're going through the motions, where here it's very intentional. And I find people do a lot better in fewer sessions because they're more emotionally invested. And, that's really the key to healing. It's like, are you ready to get better? Yeah, I'm ready to get better. It's like, okay, guess what? You're better. Really, it's not so much that I have this magic wand. It's just, I think I create the space where people come in, and I kind of just extend, healing, that's beyond any of us. We're all capable of facilitating this. It's just a matter of getting in touch with it. So I think I create the space, and people come, and we have really good outcomes.
But you also use a hybrid approach, meaning that you use a little bit like the acupuncture, the cupping. There's other things that you use, the meditation, the yoga. These are all things that can almost complement, the work that is the standard physical therapy work. So I think you add that. That's the value that you bring in that's different. And to your point, also the setting. And the mind over the body also has a different approach. It's all about the mind, right? And it's all in the mind. You can change a lot of things with your mind, and you work on that. And I think that's a whole different angle. And to your point, yes, it's not something you're going to get in a traditional PT practice, because again, you're right. These guys have to pay the bills and so on and so forth. The insurance usually are paying the bills, and the insurance will limit, services to a certain amount of hours, visits, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. You can't just do whatever you want in the body, because it's not going to be billable. There's a lot of things that happen beyond, the understanding of our common folks, because it's just behind the scenes. Exactly. And it makes it difficult. And those are people that choose. They understand that their route is going to be a dead end, and therefore they want something different. Ultimately, they're able to pay. Again, that's a question. Some people say, well, that's only for those that can afford this.
Yeah. And I try not to really turn people away. I try and tell people, I'll work with you, come in for one visit. I'll give you a lot of homework, and you can just do a lot of this on your own, and you can call me, and maybe I'll see you again, in another month after you do some of this stuff on your own. Like I try and make it as accessible to people as possible, because I don't want to only work with privileged people that, have means. And this should be available to everybody. So, I do my best to kind of work with people and say, just come in for one visit. A lot of people are paying $20 or $40 copays 3 times a week for 6 to 8 weeks. I said, if you think about just, one visit paying me, and then, that might last you for a couple of weeks. And that's why too, it's not applicable for someone who's, post-surgical, people, like I said, I'm glad the systems are in place for a reason. If you just had, a total knee replacement, you need to go to physical therapy 3 times a week for 6 to 8 weeks. So you go there and you have your insurance pay, and then people usually find me afterward and say, I can do it on my own. I know what to do. I just need some guidance. I do yoga, I exercise. I just need someone to help me navigate. And I say, great. That's where I come in.
Well, that's certainly great work, and I appreciate the idea that you do consider the financials, and you work with people that way. That's great, and I think that's great for audiences to know that. Now, do you do anything remotely? I mean, I know you need at least some sessions, physically in presence in your space, but during COVID, for example, how was it in that
Yeah,
space that you
during
created?
COVID, yeah, I definitely started doing. At first, I was like, I can't do it like that. But then, COVID happened, and I had people calling me, and they're like, I'm in pain, but I can't leave the house. I can't go into a center, and I couldn't travel or do anything. We were all sequestered, and so I did start doing, distant remote healing sessions, which was a paradigm shift because I'm used to just getting my hands on people and really connecting with them, in person, one-on-one. But, you know, I had some really good results doing some distant healing with people. I was able to talk them through it. We were able to be on FaceTime, and, they had the yoga mats and they had the things and they had known what to do. So I was able to talk them through some things and say, put your hand here, see how you're doing that. That's not what you need to do, and just have really good, like almost consult sessions with a little bit, and I could still guide them through a meditation. So yeah, I do distant healing. Of course, I prefer to work with people in person, but I've done some distant healing, and that's certainly an option too. And just for the guidance piece too, because some people are far away and they're like, I just need to talk to someone about what's going on. So I'm like, call me and we'll do a phone consult, and we'll set it up like that. So yeah, I do offer distant remote.
Excellent. Well, now we know. So
Yeah.
hey, yeah, at least people have the option, and then they can certainly travel to you. That's great. And I'm sure maybe someone from a different state wants to just learn about your style and your approach, and maybe you can guide them and some basic elements. To your point, not everybody is going to need the same level of care, I guess, or treatment. So depending on what their needs, I mean, you can, I guess, work with them. So I want to go back to the book. Now the book is really the whole picture, the whole story. It's really you, from A to Z. I mean, to this point in life, and maybe even your future vision, right? And so, but what are some of the key components in the book? Like, what, to get the people excited right now, and for them to read the book, we need like the juice. Like, we're gonna get that book. We want to get the most of it. What would those items be?
So I think there's really kind of something for everybody. And that's why a lot of people, I've gotten really great feedback on the book. I mean, chapter 1, I talk about stepping outside my comfort zone. And just after graduating from college, I went to University of South Carolina, which was a huge kind of culture shock after growing up in New Jersey. And then decided to move to California, which was, a huge step outside my comfort zone. So, that decision to just leave home and travel to this place that I never knew, but I kind of had this calling to do it. So that's how the story starts, stepping outside my comfort zone. And then, which ultimately led me back to New Jersey for physical therapy school after going to California and realizing I did want to be a healer and I wanted to be a physical therapist. So went back to New Jersey and did my physical therapy work, moved to New York City, and then went to India after I had graduated and gotten married. And so it's just kind of saying, like, stepping outside my comfort zone just kind of set the stage of all those wonderful opportunities. And it just took a step outside my comfort zone. So that was really the point of those early chapters. And then creative parenting, creative recovery, creative parenting, talking a lot about Waldorf education, like we had talked about, and talking about how much healing that really did for me. And then that really connected me to The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which is a book about creative recovery. Because as my kids were painting and doing all these creative things, I said, I have this restrictive belief about myself that I'm not creative, but I see it in my children. It's born into them. So why do I think that I'm not? So just this process of creative recovery with the help of Julia Cameron's 12-week self-study book. And then that's really through the writing, through that process, gave me the courage to say, no, I'm a writer and I want to write a book. So, the book kind of leads down that direction, and then discovering that my husband was going to need a kidney transplant, and just that process, and the couple months leading up to the surgery, doing lots of clearing work, especially remotely with different healers, just getting lots of like intuitive connections and feeling like really like guidance. I had a healer tell me, I'm feeling your grandfather right now saying, believe in your bones. And this intuitive reader that said, I see spirit wrapped around your organs, guiding you. I mean, just stuff that really kind of gave me the strength and the courage to like clear me out and really, I think, set the stage for such a transformative wake up, because I had done so much of that work. And then when I woke up, and started the whole journey of stopping drinking and going to some AA meetings, not that I would consider myself an alcoholic, but just really loving the work of letting go and letting God and kind of giving, it over to a higher power really resonated with me, and realizing I was a highly sensitive person. And that I was numbing myself with alcohol and also with food, and how to cope and manage with that, and how alcohol and food were like numbing me when I was feeling too much because I was too sensitive, but learning how to navigate that better, and ultimately realizing my high sensitivity is a gift and why I am a healer and what makes me really kind of good at that. So, but I think that all happened, as part of the journey, as part of the realization. So my book just kind of goes through all that chapter by chapter, layer by layer, and then talking about the last chapter is Sri Lanka and going there with the Buddhist monks, and just that kind of magical journey that I was so privileged to be a part of. I mean, we met the president of Sri Lanka. He literally bowed to the monk we were traveling with.
Wow.
He bowed to his feet, and we went to the forest monastery that he trained in as a young monk, and had all these just reverent pujas, these spiritual ceremonies, meditations under the Bodhi tree. I mean, just things that I was there being like, how did this happen? And I tell the story too. It was a couple months after the surgery. It was like December. And the surgery was in August, and it was like almost Christmas time. I was writing, and my friend who was at the temple was like, "Oh, you have to come to Sri Lanka with us." And I said, "I can't go to Sri Lanka. I just had surgery a couple months ago. It's Christmas time. I have kids. I'm wrapping presents." And then I thought about life outside my comfort zone and moving to California. And I said, has anyone ever invited you to Sri Lanka? Are you really going to say no to this? And, my husband, who was supportive and said, "Hey, you gave me a kidney. If you want to go to Sri Lanka,
Go.
we have grandparents, we'll help out with the kids. So you might as well go." And I was like, all right, I'll go, I guess. I don't even know where Sri Lanka is, and then went and had just the most kind of magical, miraculous trip ever. And it was the perfect place for my book to gain momentum. And really, I was able to work on it, writing on the bus for hours, traveling through the country. So it's just the whole story kind of start to finish. And, I think, like I said, I think there's something for everybody out there, people who are seeking self-realization, people who like to travel, the creative process, the struggle of finding your voice and who you are, struggles with food and alcohol. I think the power of meditation and mindfulness. I think there's just something in there for everybody. And, it came through me. It came on the pages. And then I was fortunate enough. I have a dear friend who's a retired actor who is my mentor and my editor. And he ended up helping me edit it. So it just really became the best version of itself. And I get really great feedback of how the book flows. And I say, "Oh, that's my friend, the editor. He just said this book, it needs to flow." And afterward, people are like, "It just flows. I read it and I just kind of flow through the story with you." So I think people will, hopefully they'll pick it up and they'll enjoy it.
Well, I'm sure they will. It sounds like a very, very encouraging book. It's really motivational. I think it's a pure story of a lot of things that that anyone can actually benefit from. I think the whole your life is a lot of things that we can all use, in terms of steps. And a lot of folks, sometimes they don't know and they need that resource, somebody to guide them, at least role model type. But you know what? Maybe a book can be a great, movie script, I have to say.
Well, that's really funny you should say that, because I just finished the first draft of the screenplay. So
there you go. So we're gonna look forward to it. Huh?
I share that vision. I hope it will be a film someday.
I listen. It has every single element that would make it, and it's not even fictional. It's real, and with a little twist here and there. I think it can be a clear success. So I wish you the best on that one.
Years, yeah.
Oh, I know it will. I mean, again, the story itself is just unique, and I've seen there's a lot of similar, concepts in movies that are really like attractive, and they make true stories and really get people to really see them. So yeah, I mean, you have something unique there. So I think it's gonna be great. So just don't forget about us next time when you have that. Let's have another show. We'll talk about it.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
right, all right. Well, listen, we've come to the end of the hour here. I mean, it's been great. I thank you for the time. Thank you for sharing a lot of positive stuff, a lot of rich, content here, and insights for a lot of folks here watching and listening. And just want to close the show with anything you want to add in terms of advice or wisdom words that you want to share before we close.
Yeah. So there's a quote by Carl Jung where the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And I always like ending with that and just saying, it's to realize one's destiny is a person's only obligation, which is from The Alchemist. And we're all here, and I think we all, maybe it's more obvious to some of us than others, why we are, or maybe some people are like, I don't really care about that stuff, but we all know at the end of the day we're here for a reason. And the journey of self-realization is just so important. So just to connect to yourself through just a mindful moment, and to just live your life's purpose.
All right. Well, we'll take those words of wisdom and we're going to cherish them and apply them. So, Doctor, thank you so much for being with us. And by the way, I do want to just to highlight the book, the name, and also where they can get it.
Sure. The book is called Recovering My True Self, and it's by me, Melissa Mayer. You can find out where to purchase it on www.melissamayer.org, MELISSAMAYER.org. It has links to get the book, podcasts I've been on, my blog, information about my holistic physical therapy work. I'm also on Facebook, Melissa Anthony Mayer, and on Instagram, Mel May Evolve. So, but my website, melissamayer.org, is really the best place to go to find out about my work and my book. And thank you.
And the link of the website will be on the description of the show, so people actually can literally just click and go, and hopefully they can benefit from everything you do out there, whether it's the physical therapy, the holistic approach, or the actual book. They'll have access to you. Doc, thank you so much for being with us, and I've learned a lot, and I enjoyed every moment of it. And thank you so much, folks. Thank you for being with us, for watching, for listening in. We'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic. Bye for now.
Blessings.